Welcome to TERAFLORA Studio, a place where forgotten objects, humble stones, and weathered wood are given a second life beneath the open sky. Here, the garden is not only a space of plants, but also a canvas of stories, where every path, bench, and lantern whispers of patience, care, and imagination. Today's journey is a quiet invitation to see with softer eyes, to notice how driftwood twisted by the sea can become sculpture, how branches fallen from trees can be woven into art, and how old objects, once discarded, can bloom again as rustic treasures. It is not about perfection. It is about presence, about learning to walk slowly among the simple things, and discovering how beauty often hides in what is imperfect. Before we begin, it is important to share something clearly. All of the ideas, the words, and the inspiration you hear in this video have been thoughtfully composed with the assistance of AI technology. This allows us to gather stories and creativity into one flowing narration. Yet what truly matters is not the technology itself, but the way these ideas inspire you to create with your own hands, in your own garden, in your own time. As you listen, let the pace be gentle. Let the imagery unfold like a breeze over leaves, or the trickle of water across stone. Feel free to pause, to imagine, to dream of how these ideas might take root in your own space. And if you find comfort and inspiration here in TERAFLORA Studio, we warmly invite you to subscribe. Join us in this ongoing journey of rustic beauty and renewal, where every season, every object, and every story is another chance to create something timeless. At the edge of the garden, a door stands where no house remains. Its hinges creak softly in the summer air. Its paint, once bold, now mellowed by time, whispers stories of places it has known. This is not an entrance to rooms or walls anymore, but a threshold into wonder, a passage that turns an ordinary backyard into something quietly enchanted. Step closer, and you'll notice the way roses climb around its frame, their blossoms spilling in pink and white like lace stitched by nature herself. Lavender gathers near the base, releasing a fragrance that mingles with the earth's warmth, while bees hum lazily between blooms. Through the crack of the slightly ajar door, a cobblestone path bends away, leading the imagination to worlds unseen. It's a reminder that even in our smallest gardens, mystery can live in plain sight, waiting only for a door to make us pause before stepping through. There's a certain poetry in giving an old door a new life outdoors. Once used to keep things in or out, now it invites. Instead of closing, it opens, framing the sky, the flowers, and the shifting light of each season. Its weathered grain and worn brass handle carry the character of age, making it more charming than anything newly made could ever be. You don't need much to try this yourself. A discarded wooden door, perhaps found in a flea market or a renovation pile, becomes a striking feature when stood upright among hedges or fences. Let climbing plants weave around its edges, or hang a lantern above to make it glow in the evening. Even the imperfections, the cracks, the peeling paint, are what make it beautiful. They speak of resilience, of history, of things worth keeping. And that is the heart of this idea, that beauty doesn't always require polish. Sometimes it's the marks of age, the softened edges, the faded colors that make something feel alive. A rustic door garden gate doesn't just frame your flowers. It frames the way you see your own space. It turns the act of walking into the backyard into a moment of discovery, reminding you that every day can hold a small journey. So the next time you see an old door leaning against a wall, think of it not as junk, but as a threshold, a portal waiting to be placed in the garden, ready to whisper. Step through and see what waits beyond. Imagine stepping into your garden and finding a trail that feels as though it belongs in a storybook. Along the edges of a narrow path, glass bottles stand like sentinels of color: emerald, cobalt, amber. Each catching catching the sun in a way that makes the stones beneath your feet glow like jewels. The bottles, once forgotten in cupboards or destined for the recycling bin, have become a playful border, guiding your steps as if leading you to somewhere secret. There is a charm in the way light passes through glass. In the morning, it throws shards of blue across the gravel. By afternoon, it glows with forest greens. And as evening falls, when small solar lights hidden inside begin to flicker, the bottles transform into lanterns, tiny glowing spirits lighting a fairy's path. Flowers gather close, leaning toward the glass as though drawn by its glow. Lavender hums with bees, while ivy spills softly against the bottle's curved shoulders. A project like this asks very little of you, but it gives much in return. Collect bottles of different colors and bury them halfway into the soil along the line of a walkway. Their uneven heights and varied shapes make the trail more natural, more alive. A simple wooden sign, perhaps painted by hand with the words "Fairy Path," adds to the invitation. You don't need perfection here. The irregularity is what makes it feel enchanted, as though nature herself placed it there. And yet, behind the whimsy lies practicality. These bottles mark borders, keeping soil neatly tucked in and giving shape to the garden bed. They are sturdy, resistant to weather, and unlike store-bought edging, they come with the satisfaction of being reborn from waste. Their presence tells a story that even the simplest things, when given another chance, can become beautiful. Walking this path, you may find yourself slowing down. Each step feels softer, as if the colors and light are guiding you toward a quieter state of mind. It becomes more than just a walkway, it becomes a reminder that wonder doesn't require grand landscapes or expensive design. Sometimes it only takes the willingness to see magic in a bottle, in the glow of recycled glass, and in the quiet of a garden evening. The fairy trail doesn't just lead you forward, it carries you back to the childlike joy of believing there might be stories waiting just beyond the curve. There is something tender about an object that once spoke in letters now speaking in petals. The old typewriter, once a companion of words, sits quietly in the garden. Its keys no longer pressed by fingers, but softened by soil and roots. Where once ink flowed onto paper, now blossoms spill into the air. Daisies, lavender, chamomile. Each one a punctuation mark in the language of summer. Set on a worn wooden table, the typewriter looks both forgotten and alive. Its chipped paint carries the memory of years past, while its hollowed spaces cradle a new story. Petunias lean across its carriage like sentences breaking into laughter. Cornflowers rise with the energy of exclamation, and tiny sprigs of mint curl shyly at its sides as though whispering secrets. Sunlight filters through the branches above, laying golden patches across the keys, making the blooms shimmer like freshly written thoughts. To create something like this requires no grand effort. A vintage typewriter, often found in flea markets or tucked in attics, can be gently cleaned and lined with a bit of soil. Choose plants that thrive in shallow roots, petunias, alyssum, chamomile, or even herbs like thyme and mint. Their growth will spill naturally across the machine, softening its rigid lines into a living sculpture. What once demanded words now invites pause, inviting you to lean closer and listen to the silence filled with bees and birdsong. The magic lies in the contrast. The hard edges of metal softened by delicate blossoms. The silence of an object once noisy now filled with the hum of the garden. The transformation itself speaks of resilience, that beauty can be written without ink, that even what feels obsolete can still carry meaning. As you sit beside it, perhaps with a cup of tea, you may notice how the typewriter planter changes with time. Each season edits its story. Spring writes with tender green shoots, summer bursts into floral paragraphs, autumn lets petals drift like commas onto the soil, and winter leaves the machine bare, waiting to be rewritten again. This is no ordinary decoration. It is a reminder that every object, like every person, holds more than one story. And sometimes, the most beautiful tales are not those typed in ink, but those blooming quietly, letter by letter, petal by petal, in the heart of a garden. In the quiet hum of a summer afternoon, the garden holds a secret sculpture. It rises not from stone or marble, but from old bicycle wheels, once the companions of journeys, now turned into frames for life itself. Their spokes, weathered and silvered by time, catch the sunlight and scatter it across the ground in shifting patterns, like lace spun by the wind. Climbing roses stretch eagerly through each circle, their soft pink blossoms threading the metal with grace, while morning glories curl like ribbons, reaching upward as if to crown the wheels in bloom. The trellis becomes less of an object and more of a story, a reminder that movement does not always require wheels to turn, that beauty can grow from stillness as much as from motion. Standing before it, you can almost imagine the paths these wheels once traveled. Streets dusted with summer heat, sidewalks echoing laughter, the quick rhythm of spokes spinning. Now, in their resting place, they offer a different kind of journey. One of patience, of blossoms unfolding quietly, of vines weaving themselves into patterns more intricate than any road could map. Creating a trellis like this is simple, and yet the effect is striking. A few discarded wheels, perhaps painted in soft colors, mint, sky blue, blush, become gentle frames for climbing plants. Ivy, clematis, roses, or even beans and peas for the kitchen garden find a willing partner in the spokes. The wheels hold them gracefully, letting nature write its own design through the gaps. Over time, as leaves and blossoms gather, the metal all but disappears, leaving only a hint of its circular bones behind. The beauty of this idea lies in its whimsy. It is not a straight fence or a neat grid. It is round, playful, imperfect, and alive. Children might see halos or dream catchers, while adults may find themselves reminded of journeys past. And in every season, the trellis changes. Spring dresses it in green, summer crowns it with flowers, autumn drapes it in golden vines, and winter leaves its bare spokes catching frost like threads of silver. It is proof that even when something no longer serves its first purpose, it can still carry life. A bike will trellis whispers that beauty is not only in what we keep moving forward, but also in what we choose to let rest and bloom anew. In the gentle light of a summer afternoon, a round table stands at the heart of the garden. It is no polished piece of furniture, but an old wooden spool, once wrapped in heavy cables, now reborn as something softer, more inviting. Its circular surface carries the warm glow of the sun, while around its edges blossoms spill like a crown. Petunias in violet cascades, geraniums blushing pink, and trailing ivy weaving between them. The garden seems to lean closer to watch, as though it too admires this small circle of celebration. Upon the table rests the season's bounty, a wicker basket brimming with peaches, their skin warm from the sun, sits beside a pitcher of lemonade where ice clinks like tiny bells. Nearby, vintage teacups wait patiently, their porcelain painted with faded roses, holding the promise of company. The air is thick with scents, fruit, flowers, and the faint sweetness of honeysuckle drifting from the fence. This spool table does more than hold objects. It gathers moments. It invites you to pause in the garden, to rest your hands on wood that once carried weight, but now bears only joy. The marks and scratches on its surface are not flaws but stories, proof of a life that continues in a different form. Creating a table like this is wonderfully simple. A discarded cable spool, often found in construction sites or salvage yards, becomes a stage for beauty with little more than a coat of paint and a thoughtful touch. Plant small pots of flowers around its base or weave them into the rim, letting the blooms cascade naturally. Set it in a sunny spot where the light can paint it golden, and you will find it becomes more than furniture. It becomes a centerpiece, a reason to gather. What makes it magical is not the perfection of its form, but the harmony of contrasts. Rough wood softened by blossoms, piece of industry turned into a cradle for summer's gentleness. In its presence, time seems to slow. Every sip, every petal, every laugh shared around it feels longer, sweeter, more precious. The spool table teaches us that beauty can be found not in the grand, but in the ordinary made tender. It reminds us that even the most utilitarian things, when given a second chance, can bloom into joy. Garden's edge, a fence rises not as a wall, but as a chorus of color. Each plank tells a different story, one smoothed by rain, another scarred by time, each painted now in shades of coral, mint, sunflower yellow, lavender, and sky blue. Together they sing like a patchwork quilt stretched tall, framing the garden not in uniformity, but in joyful difference. Beneath the boards, flowers join the celebration. Zinnias flash in red and orange, petunias spill violet streams, and daisies nod like small suns at the base of the fence. Strings of bunting sway lazily overhead, adding their own rhythm to the scene as the breeze moves through. It feels less like a boundary and more like a backdrop to life, something that holds but does not confine. The beauty of a reclaimed wood fence lies in its honesty. Every crack and knot, every uneven edge becomes part of its charm. The colors do not hide these marks. They highlight them, turning imperfections into character. You know at once that this fence has lived before, that its planks once stood in barns, sheds, or porches, and that now, together, they have found a second chance. Creating one is as simple as it is rewarding. Gather boards that would otherwise be thrown away, perhaps from pallets, old furniture, or leftover renovations. Sand them just enough to smooth the surface, then let paint breathe new life into them. Bright colors can make a garden sing, while softer tones bring a quieter harmony. The choice is yours, and that is the magic of it. It reflects not only your garden, but your personality. And beyond the beauty, there is meaning. A reclaimed wood fence is an act of stewardship, proof that sustainability can also be colorful, playful, even celebratory. It turns waste into wonder, offering not only privacy or structure, but also a daily reminder that joy is found in the unexpected. As the sun sets, the fence glows with warm light, its colors deepening into richer tones. It feels alive, as if the garden itself is smiling. And in that smile, there is a message that beauty is not sameness, but the harmony of many voices, many colors, standing side by side. As the sun slips low and the garden begins to soften into twilight, a quiet transformation takes place. Along the path, towers rise, born from old pots and pans, their bellies once blackened by years in the kitchen, now glowing like beacons of warmth. Patterns of stars, flowers, and swirling vines have been cut into their metal sides, and from within, light spills out in delicate streams. The garden is no longer just alive with blooms. It breathes with lantern glow, each tower holding a story written in shadow and flame. The beauty of these towers lies in their simplicity. Each pot, once destined for the scrap heap, becomes a vessel of light when stacked and given a little imagination. Painted in hues of copper, turquoise, or gold, their surfaces catch the fading sun before surrendering to the gentle glow within. At their feet, marigolds and petunias bask in the lantern light, their colors deepening as night falls, while fireflies drift through the air as though drawn into the tower's soft celebration. It is an enchanting scene, and one you can create with ease. Gather old metal pots or pans, scratched, dented, even rusted, and stack them securely. With a drill or a simple metal cutter, carve patterns into their surfaces. They do not need to be perfect. The uneven shapes only add to their charm. Place candles inside, or for safety and longevity, tuck in solar-powered lights. When evening arrives, the towers awaken, scattering light across cobblestones, petals, and the faces of anyone who lingers nearby. There is something grounding about this kind of light. It is not the harsh brightness of electricity, but a slow, breathing glow that seems alive. It invites you to linger in the garden longer, to listen to the chorus of crickets and the rustle of leaves, to feel the air cool on your skin while shadows dance at your feet. In their stillness, these lantern towers remind us of transformation, not only of objects, but of moments. That the ordinary can become extraordinary when seen differently. That even what has been worn and used can still shine, perhaps more beautifully than before. And so the garden at night becomes more than a place of flowers. It becomes a place of stories told in light, shadows, and the quiet magic that only arrives when the day lets go. Leaning quietly against the garden wall, the old ladder wears its new purpose with quiet grace. Its wood, once marked by the labor of reaching rooftops and painting eaves, now holds something far lighter. Blooms and herbs that spill gently from terracotta pots. The rungs, which once bore the weight of human footsteps, now cradle life in colors and scents, softening the ladder's rough edges into something tender. Each level tells a story. At the top, ivy drapes downward like a curtain of green. In the middle, geraniums burst in red and pink, their petals catching sunlight as it passes through climbing roses overhead. Lower down, pots of rosemary and thyme release their fragrance into the air, blending with the sweetness of petunias at the base. The ladder, weathered and cracked, seems almost proud of its transformation, standing no longer as a tool for chores, but as a frame for beauty. Repurposing a ladder in this way is as practical as it is poetic. Small backyards or patios often hunger for vertical solutions, and an old ladder offers exactly that. By placing pots along its rungs, you not only save ground space but also create a living tower that draws the eye upward. Herbs grow close at hand, flowers climb toward the sun, and even the imperfections of the wood add to the rustic charm. What makes this design special is its simplicity. No need for complicated construction or costly materials. Just a ladder once forgotten, a few pots, and the patience of growth. Painted in soft pastels, it becomes playful. Left in its raw wood, it speaks of age and authenticity. Either way, it carries the garden upward, giving height and shape where before there was only flat ground. As you stand before it, you may notice how the ladder changes with the seasons. Spring brings tender herbs pushing upward. Summer crowns it with blossoms. Autumn drapes it in golden leaves, and winter leaves the frame bare, waiting to bloom again. It is a cycle of renewal, embodied in an object that itself has been renewed. The old ladder vertical shelf reminds us that beauty often comes not from perfection, but from reimagining what we already have. That in every weathered step and worn rung, there is still strength to hold something new, something alive, something worth pausing for. Along the garden's winding path, colors rise not only from flowers but from the very vessels that hold them. Old metal drums, once rusting in corners and forgotten in sheds, now wear coats of radiant paint. Coral fading into pink, turquoise melting into gold, lavender humming softly beside sunflower yellow. They stand in a cheerful row, each brimming with life, turning what was once industrial into something deeply alive and playful. The drums overflow with blooms. Marigolds blaze like drops of sunlight. Petunias spill in violet cascades. And tulips lift their delicate heads toward the sky. Ivy drapes lazily over the painted edges, softening the metal with green tendrils that sway gently in the breeze. Bees move from drum to drum, as though visiting a gallery of colors, while butterflies rest on petals made warmer by the afternoon light. There is joy in the transformation of something so utilitarian. These drums once carried paint, oil, or chemicals, their surfaces stained and scarred, yet with a scrubbing, a coat of primer, and strokes of bright paint, they become sculptures in themselves, functional planters that bring height, rhythm, and personality to the garden. What once seemed harsh now feels whimsical. What once seemed useless now hums with purpose. For small backyards, these rainbow planters are a gift. They can be arranged in clusters to anchor a corner, lined neatly to guide a path, or scattered to create surprises among the greenery. Their size allows for planting not just flowers, but also herbs, shrubs, or even small fruiting plants. And the paint, whether bold rainbow stripes or soft blended tones, turns each planter into a character in the garden story. But perhaps the true beauty lies in the message. To look at a rusting drum and imagine it blooming with roses or overflowing with lavender is to see possibility where others see waste. It teaches us to trust color, to embrace imperfection, and to believe that joy can be made from what has been cast aside. As the day slips into evening, the painted drums glow softly in the fading light, their flowers gently closing for rest. The garden seems to smile, not only with blossoms, but with the laughter of colors standing proudly side by side. Proof that beauty is never too far from even the most unlikely places. Above the cobblestone terrace, color floats as if caught midair. Once heavy and forgotten in storage, old metal drums now hang like jewels from beams and pergolas, their surfaces painted in cheerful tones of coral, mint, turquoise, and sunflower yellow. Suspended with chains or sturdy hooks, they sway gently with the summer breeze, humming quietly as flowers spill from their rims. Each planter tells a story of rebirth. Purple petunias cascade in soft rivers, mingling with the fiery orange of nasturtiums and the snowy drape of alyssum. Ivy stretches downward like green ribbons, softening the boldness of metal. Together, they transform what was once cold and industrial into a suspended garden, a collection of floating blossoms that draw the eye upward and make the space feel alive with movement. The magic of these hanging planters lies not just in their beauty but in their practicality. For small gardens and patios, where space is scarce, they offer vertical growing without demanding ground. A row of hanging drums above a terrace creates shade, fragrance, and vibrant color all at once. Even herbs, mint, thyme, or trailing rosemary find a home in their wide bellies, providing both scent and flavor close at hand. Creating them is as simple as it is satisfying. Old drums, halved or left whole, can be painted in bright or pastel hues. Drill drainage holes at the bottom, fill with soil, and let your plants tumble freely. Chains or hooks ensure they hang securely, and when clustered together, they become more than planters. They become living lanterns of bloom, lighting the garden with petals instead of flame. As evening falls, the magic deepens. The drums, their surfaces catching the glow of sunset, swing gently like lanterns in the fading light. Flowers close for the night, their silhouettes soft against the painted curves, while the air carries the mingled fragrance of jasmine and roses climbing nearby. There is a lesson in their sway, that even the heaviest things can learn to hang lightly, that even the most industrial forms can cradle beauty when given another purpose. Hanging drum planters remind us that gardens are not bound by the ground. They can rise, float, and dance with the breeze, carrying joy wherever the air may take them. As the last rays of the sun slip away, the garden begins to whisper in light. From the branches of trees and the arches of pergolas, glass bottles sway gently, their bellies glowing with warm golden sparks. Emerald, cobalt, and amber, they scatter color into the dusk, as though stars have descended and chosen to rest within their glass walls. Each bottle, once forgotten in cupboards or left for recycling, now breathes with quiet magic. The lanterns do more than illuminate a path. They transform it. Cobblestones glisten under the shifting hues. Lavender hums faintly in the cool air, and roses lean toward the glow as though listening to a secret. Fireflies drift lazily nearby, their flicker weaving with the bottle lights, until it is hard to tell where nature ends and human craft begins. The garden feels changed, not merely seen, but enchanted, alive with an atmosphere that lingers long after the lights are lit. What makes this transformation so compelling is its simplicity. With only glass bottles, a bit of twine, and small fairy lights, whether solar-powered or battery-fed, you can bring this dream into your own backyard. The bottles, painted or left clear, each take on a different voice. Cobalt deepens into cool night, amber warms like a hearth, and emerald carries the freshness of summer even after dark. Arranged along a path, clustered in a tree, or scattered among bushes, they create a rhythm of light that guides the eye and soothes the spirit. But beyond beauty, these lanterns carry meaning. They remind us that even discarded things can glow again, that light is not only found in perfection, but in the act of being seen differently. To hang a bottle lantern is to choose wonder, to invite a softness into the evening that turns ordinary nights into stories waiting to be told. As you sit on a bench nearby, perhaps with a cool drink in hand, the world feels slower. Shadows play across petals, breezes nudge the bottles into gentle sways, and the soft hum of summer night deepens. In that moment, surrounded by glowing glass, you realize it is not the garden that has changed. It is you. You are reminded to see beauty not as something far away, but as something waiting quietly in the things we once overlooked. In a quiet corner of the garden, where the sun falls gently across the grass, a bench waits. It is not polished or store-bought, but made from old wooden pallets, their rough planks painted in shades of cream and sky blue, softened by cushions scattered with roses and peonies in fabric bloom. The bench seems to invite you in, as though whispering that here, time can slow, and you can simply be. Around it, the garden hums. Sunflowers sway like golden guardians, cosmos scatter their star-shaped blossoms in pinks and whites, and the air is perfumed by basil and rosemary growing nearby in terracotta pots. The pallet bench sits among it all, grounded in simplicity, its rough edges smoothed only by use and care. There is no pretense here, only comfort, born from the act of giving old wood another life. What makes this seat special is not just how it looks, but how it feels. To sink into the cushions is to feel cradled by something handmade, honest, and warm. The bench is more than a place to sit. It is a place to pause, to listen to the wind threading through jasmine vines above, to sip lemonade while bees murmur among the lavender. Every detail is ordinary, yet when gathered together, they form a moment that feels extraordinary. The making of such a bench requires little beyond imagination. Discarded pallets, often overlooked as nothing more than rough wood, can be stacked and secured into a sturdy frame. A coat of pastel paint brings brightness, while cushions soften the surface and invite long afternoons of rest. Placed against a fence, beneath a pergola, or beneath the open sky, the pallet bench becomes a stage for summer's quiet celebrations. And in its presence, the truth becomes clear. Beauty does not demand perfection. It asks only for care. What was once destined for the scrap heap becomes a place of gathering, laughter, or even solitude. The bench does not merely serve, it reminds that comfort can be built from what we already have, that rest is found not in grandeur but in the simple act of pausing amid flowers and light. Here, on this upcycled pallet bench, the garden feels endless. Each breath is richer, each moment slower, and each season more alive. Against the quiet backdrop of a garden wall, an old window frame stands, not to look through rooms, but to look into life itself. It's wood, painted in soft sage green and chipped by years of weather, now cradles planter boxes spilling with rosemary, thyme, and lavender. Where once glass caught the morning sun, now sprigs of green lean forward, carrying scents that drift gently through the air, calling bees to linger. The frame, once a boundary between indoors and out, has become an invitation. Herbs spill freely through its open squares, their leaves brushing against one another as if in conversation. Mint releases its cool perfume, thyme curls delicately along the edges, and lavender sways with the slightest breeze. Below, petunias bloom in a riot of color, grounding the scene in summer brightness. The garden no longer keeps the window as a divider, it embraces it as a bridge. There is something poetic in this transformation. What once defined limits now extends possibility. A frame meant to hold clear panes now holds living things, offering meals their seasoning and evenings their fragrance. The scratches in the wood, the faded paint, the slight warp from years of use, all of these become part of its charm. Rather than hide its age, the herbs celebrate it, climbing and spilling as if to soften every line. Creating such a piece requires only vision. An old window frame, often found in flea markets or renovation piles, can be brushed with paint or left in its raw, weathered state. Small planter boxes or terracotta pots fit easily into the frame sections, ready to host herbs or trailing blooms. Hung against a fence, leaned against a wall, or even freestanding with a bit of support, it becomes both practical and poetic, a source of flavor and fragrance, and a centerpiece for the garden's design. As the day stretches on, the window frame shifts with the light. Morning warms the herbs, noon fills their leaves with brightness, and evening cloaks them in golden glow. Each time you pass, you may brush a sprig of rosemary or pluck a bit of mint, carrying the garden into your kitchen. And in that simple act, the frame reminds you, beauty and purpose can be reborn, not through perfection, but through a second chance beneath the sun. In a shaded corner where the air cools and the light softens, a pond rests quietly, no larger than a small table. Its edges are held in a circle of smooth river pebbles, each stone warmed by the sun yet cool to the touch, their shapes rounded by years of water and weather. Within this simple frame, clear water mirrors the sky, broken only by the slow drift of pink and white water lilies. Around the pond, life gathers. Ferns unfurl their green fronds, ivy trails gently across stone, and moss creeps between pebbles like soft velvet. Dragonflies hover above the surface, their wings catching flashes of sunlight as they dart and pause again. It feels as though the garden holds its breath here, offering a space of calm where time lingers just a little longer. And then, with a smile, you notice the details. Tiny fairy houses nestly at the water's edge, their mossy roofs blending into the ferns, their miniature doors leaning as though they've been here for centuries. A small wooden bridge arches over one side of the pond, its planks faded but steady, inviting the imagination to cross into another world. Suddenly, this is no longer just water held by stone. It is a threshold into stories, a place where magic might pause for a sip before moving on. Making such a pond requires no grand design. A shallow basin or dug circle lined with a waterproof layer, edged with carefully chosen pebbles, becomes the heart of it. Add a few lilies, perhaps a fern or two, and the scene grows naturally into its own rhythm. The fairy houses can be simple crafts of wood, stone, or clay, details that whisper to children and adults alike that this is a space where imagination lives. What makes the pebble pond enchanting is its humility. It does not boast grandeur or size. It offers intimacy, a place to sit quietly with tea, to watch ripples move like slow conversations, to notice the play of light on stone and water. It reminds us that beauty often hides in small, deliberate spaces, where the ordinary shifts into wonder. And as the evening falls, when the last golden rays touch the water and fireflies begin their glow, the rustic pebble fairy pond becomes less of a garden feature and more of a dream. One you can step into, one that lingers even after you've left. On the surface of a garden table, where morning light pools like honey, tiny worlds rest quietly inside delicate teacups. Their porcelain walls, painted with faded roses and edged with fine cracks of age. Cradle moss so green it looks like velvet. From the moss rise miniature daisies, pebble paths no wider than a fingertip, and small sprigs of lavender that seem to wave in a breeze of their own. These teacup gardens invite you to lean closer, to peer into a space where scale no longer matters. A teacup becomes a meadow, a pebble becomes a country road, and a single sprig of time transforms into a forest tree. Each little scene feels alive, as if you were quiet enough, the fairies might continue their walk across the moss, their voices soft as the hum of bees in the distance. There is something deeply comforting in creating these miniature gardens. They do not demand space or grandeur, only imagination and care. A single teacup, perhaps one forgotten at the back of a cupboard or found in a flea market, becomes the frame. Fill it with soil, tuck in moss or succulents, add a pebble or two, perhaps a tiny bench or a handmade fairy house. And suddenly you have crafted a story contained in porcelain, placed on windowsills, garden tables, or nestled among larger flower beds. These mini gardens offer small surprises waiting to be discovered. Their charm lies in their intimacy. You don't look at them from afar, you lean in. You pause, you notice details, you allow yourself to imagine. They are less about decoration and more about invitation. An invitation to slow down, to see the wonder in the small, and to remember the childlike joy of believing that magic may be real. In the afternoon, when sunlight filters through branches and dapples across the cups, the effect is dreamlike. Shadows dance over the moss, petals catch glimmers of gold, and the teacups glow softly as though they are holding not just plants but light itself. And perhaps, in a way, they are. For within each tiny garden is a reminder that beauty does not need size to be powerful. Sometimes, it is the smallest creations, held in the palm of your hand, that carry the greatest magic. So our quiet walk through the garden comes to its end. We have wandered past old ladders dressed in flowers, bottles glowing with hidden light, and benches built from pallets that hold the weight of summer afternoons. Each piece, once forgotten, has shown us that beauty need not be bought or polished. It can rise softly from what is already around us, waiting only for a second chance. This journey is not just about decoration, but about perspective. To look at a rusted drum and see a planter, to see a discarded frame and imagine herbs spilling over its edges. These are reminders that creativity is not about having more, but about noticing more. The garden teaches us, again and again, that even the smallest things can bloom if given patience, care, and light. As you step back into your own space, I hope these ideas stay with you, not as rules, but as invitations. Invitations to pick up what you might have thrown away, to place it gently in the soil, and to watch it become part of your story. Every garden, no matter how small, carries the possibility of wonder. And perhaps, the most meaningful creations are the ones that carry both memory and imagination together. This is TERAFLORA Studio, where we share not only ideas, but moments of quiet renewal. If today's journey has given you inspiration, I invite you to subscribe. Not as a gesture of habit, but as a way of keeping this circle alive. With each subscription, you give strength to a small studio and allow these stories of transformation to continue. Thank you for walking with me. Thank you for seeing beauty where others might not. Until next time,